About 25 years ago, I was serving in a church as a youth pastor, and part-time I was working on my master's degree. And I had the students do an exercise. I pulled out a bunch of crayons and paper, and I said, draw the church. Draw the church. And when they did, pulled them up, and then I used that as teaching material. As you might imagine, well, same thing I did this week. I on Google, which you couldn't do 25 years ago, on Google, I put in drawings of the church, and it looked something like this. And that's pretty close to what I received when I asked these students to do that, okay? I took all these pieces of paper and I went into the pastor and I let him see them, and I was like, what do you think about that? And he said, it's pretty good. I was like, what? What do you mean that's pretty good? That's not good at all. Because that's not the church. This is the church. Put that other picture up there. Boom. That's the church. I said, we have a problem because we are valuing a building over people. God did not send his son to die on a cross for a building. He sent his son to die on the cross for people. And it's people that make up the church. Now, I'm all right. I'm not like hard, cold, dogmatic. I'll punch you in the face if you say you're going to the church. All right? I realize that we incorporate that terminology in with a building. And it can make sense because this is our primary place where the church, He's Alive Church, gathers. But honestly, if He's Alive Church, or if you gather with other believers out in a park, there's the church. If you gather out in a civic center, there's the church. If you gather at a convenience store, there's the church. If for whatever reason you gathered in a bathroom, there's the church. The church is the people. The church is not a building. It is the body. It is people. It is the bride of Christ. Now, if that's the case, why should we ever value a building? I mean, why not? Let's just invest in people. We need to make no investment in a building because the church is not a building. Buildings come, buildings go. I guarantee you this building is not going to be eternal, but the people that are in here are. So why would you ever place any value on a building, on facilities? Well, I want us today to have a biblical perspective of our facilities. So I want to guide you to a few scriptures, and then we're going to wrap it all up into a few principles. First of all, in Exodus chapter 25. Now you remember, you're familiar maybe with Moses and the Exodus and leading the people out, and he leads them into the wilderness, and then he goes up on Mount Sinai, and he gets the word from God. 10 Commandments is where all this happens. Well, shortly after that, Jesus also gives him some other instructions. And he says here in chapter 25 of Exodus, verses 8 and 9, and let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell in their midst, exactly as I show you concerning the pattern of the tabernacle and of all its furniture, so you shall make it. Now the tabernacle, you may be familiar with the concept of a temple. The tabernacle is basically a temporary, portable temple. And as the children of Israel wandered through the wilderness, the tabernacle was always set up first. When they would stop somewhere, the tabernacle would be set up in the middle, and then there were 12 tribes, so they put 3 tribes on each side of the tabernacle, and it spread out from there. But it'd always be in the center. God would send a cloud down to give a visible representation that His presence was there. But what I want you to understand here is He said very specifically, I'm going to tell you exactly how I want this done. And if you start reading through 25 and 26, he gets very, very specific on what he is telling them to do. I want it exactly, don't just build me a tent, I want it exactly like this. Well, if you fast forward a few hundred years, 500 or 600 years, you get to King David. And David has established his kingdom. David has built his palace. He's looking out from his palace one day, and he looks over and he sees this tent that used to be portable throughout the wilderness. And the Ark of the Covenant was in there, and he said, wait, I'm in a nice house, and God's over there in a small house. We need to build a house. I'm going to build God a house. And he tells Nathan the prophet, well, I'm going to build God a house. And Nathan says, go for it, buddy. He didn't really say it that casual to the king, but he basically said that. And then God comes to Nathan the prophet, and he tells him this in 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 5 and 7. He says, go and tell my servant David, thus says the Lord, would you build me a house to dwell in? I've not lived in a house since the day I brought up the people of Israel from Egypt to this day, but I have been moving about in a tent for my dwelling. He basically says, you going to build me a house? You're going to build me a house. Ultimately, you don't have a house that can contain me. All right? Now, that tent was something I told you to build so that the people would remember and know that I'm in your presence. But you can't build a house for me. In fact, he goes on in 2 Samuel verse 7:11 and says, moreover, the Lord declares to you that the Lord will make you a house. Which may sound a little strange as David is sitting in his new digs and he's in his new palace. He's like, I got a palace. And God says, no, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm going to make you a house. I'm going to make you your line, the Davidic line. It's going to bring forth the Messiah ultimately. He tells him about Solomon and what he's going to do through Solomon. He actually will let Solomon build him a temple. But he says this in verse 16, and your house and your kingdom shall be made sure forever before me. Your throne shall be established forever. David, you want to talk about putting me in a house? But I'm going to build you a house that has no wood. I'm going to build you a house that has no gold. I'm going to build you a house that cannot be contained. This is going to be a house that's going to go forth, and it's going to bring forth the Messiah who will offer salvation to the world. You can't build a house like this. You want to build a house? Fine. You can't build a house like God builds it. If you fast forward to the New Testament, after Jesus has come and he has died and was buried and resurrected, and then he leaves and he says, if I leave, I will send another. And he talks about the Holy Spirit coming. And once the Holy Spirit comes up and takes residence in the heart of the believer, look what happens in 1 Corinthians 6:19 through 20. Or do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? You are not your own, for you were bought with a price. So glorify God in your body. You see, now the temple is in the body of the believer, the Holy of Holies. Now, when we put all that together, what do we get? I want to share with you these 5 principles real quickly about what we own. How do we give God our best in what we own? How do we give God specifically in our church our best with facilities? How do we put all that in the framework of the entire counsel of the Bible? The first principle is God is in the details. God is in the details. We learn that in Exodus 25 and throughout the Bible. God's very specific on how to do it. But what I want you to understand is it's not about getting bogged down in the details. The reason God gave those details was everything pretty much that he told about building that tabernacle and then later building the temple, it all pointed to Jesus. It all had symbolic relevance. It all pointed to the coming king. So it wasn't about just having an altar. It wasn't about just having the showbread. It wasn't just about having this right-sized curtain. It wasn't all about that. It was about Jesus. And ultimately, he gave those details because it pointed to Christ. And Christ deserves our best. So in many ways, our facility here was representing Jesus Christ. So it should represent our best. But we don't get bogged down in the details. But there are details. God is in the details. He He is to be glorified and honored. The tabernacle and the temple represented the presence of God. So think about it like this. We don't want to put the message out there that God's presence is only in here. No, God's presence goes with us wherever we go. But we do want to make sure that people know that because we value the Lord and his glory, that the place where He's Alive Church gathers is going to be one that glorifies him. Second principle. In the New Testament, Christian worship moved from the temple into homes. Yeah, in fact, if you were in New Testament times and you went through and you were like, where's the local church? What are you talking about? I mean, Bob and his group meet over here, and Sally and her group meet over there, and they met in homes. They didn't have large facilities. They tried to worship in the temple. Because, see, the New Testament Christians, many of the first ones were Jews. And they didn't say, I'm rejecting Judaism and I'm going to Christianity. They thought, we are fulfilled Jews. We've been looking for the Messiah, and he has come, Jesus, and now we're still Jews who have received the Messiah. That's what the New Testament church was. So they wanted to worship at the temple, but they got kicked out. They couldn't worship at the synagogue, so they had to start meeting in small groups. In fact, when we read in Acts that 3,000 were added to their number, don't get in your mind that all of a sudden they owned the Colosseum and 3,000 of them gathered every Sunday. 3,000 gathered, but probably in groups of 5 and 6 and 10 and 12, small groups in homes around. So it no longer was this central place. It became that. So let me ask you this. If the church is meeting in your home, you going to leave it trashy? No, if the church was coming over, I know many of you have the gift of hospitality. And some of you host life groups. And when life groups come over to your home, generally things are picked up, right? Generally things are in order. Generally, that's why most of you won't host a life group. Because you don't want to have to get your place in order. But for the benefit of the body, you have your place in order. Christians met in homes. The third principle is the temple is now housed in the body of the believer. As we saw in 1 Corinthians, the temple of God is in the heart of the believer. You don't have to come here to meet God. You meet God anywhere that you are. And if you're a believer in Jesus Christ, you carry that Holy of Holies with you everywhere you go. Your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. And fourth principle is facilities are tools for ministry. They're not the focus of ministry. Facilities are the tools of ministry. They're not the focus of ministry. I was in a church one time, and I had a dear lady. Man, I love her. But she came to me and she says, we got a problem. And anytime I'm hit with that, I know this ain't going to be good. We got a problem, preacher. What's the problem? This was in the summertime. I just saw some kids running through the sanctuary in shorts. She kind of gave me that look like, now you know we got a problem, right? And I'm like, all right, it's Wednesday morning. And some kids ran through the sanctuary with shorts on. I said, I'll tell you what, as soon as you show me in the Bible where wearing shorts in a sanctuary is against God's law, we'll talk. See, the truth is, we don't even dress like the way they dressed prim and proper back then. There's no dress code in the Bible. Now, the Bible does say dress modestly. But here's the thing. I said, do you have a problem with them running down this hallway in shorts? She goes, well, they shouldn't be running. I go, oh, you have a problem with them walking down this hallway in shorts? And she says, no. And I go, this hallway is no more sacred than that sanctuary. Because what makes a place sacred is the people that gather there, of which God looks at the heart. We got to be careful that facilities are not the main end, but they're merely a tool. And finally, the final principle is the value of facilities lies and they are valuable in their use for making disciples. The reason we need facilities, and we need good facilities, is because people come to these facilities. And when people come and get fed, and people come and grow. So it's not the value that the facility brings in and of itself, it's the value that comes in the work and ministry that we are doing to make disciples who live forever. You see, eternal disciples right now in this age inhabit temporal buildings. But because eternal disciples inhabit temporal buildings, we need to take care of the buildings so we can make disciples. Does that make sense? There is a value that's placed in the building, but the value comes from who's in the building, not the building itself. So a biblical view of facilities is that we are the temples of God. And as temples of God, we inhabit a place that we need to take care of so that we can make more disciples of Jesus. Get them in and send them out. And that's specific for this context.
So a building can either shape us, or we can use the building to shape the world. I want to take you back 4 years ago, about this time of year. It's a couple months later, but 4 years ago, when we first took occupancy into this building. Actually, we were meeting every Sunday morning, praying, working feverishly, expanding the back walls. Some of you back then, if you're new to here, if you're sitting on some of the back rows now, you would actually be in the lobby at that time. And so we were working to bring all that to pass, and we got in December. But the very first message series that I preached from this stage was preaching through the book of Nehemiah. And I preached that series right from this very Bible. The reason that I preached that series was because that book all has to do with a building or rebuilding effort. Nehemiah has been called to go back to Jerusalem and help rebuild the wall around the city. And that book is all about a building and rebuilding effort. It's all about people coming together for one big moment and calling people to restore what is old, to prepare for the big thing that God is about to do for what is new, and it's calling people to a greater standard of living. And in that time, we were just 2 years old, and that series took us a year to go through it, was very relevant to where we were. And I'm telling you today, it's amazing to see the truths that have stayed with us from that moment. But I'm telling you today, as we approach our 6th year and our, is it 6th? 7th year and our 5th year in this building, prophetically speaking, God is bringing that series that we started first here back around to fruition and completing it for us, or taking us back to it in this time, this day, and for this next year. And I want to show you how before we leave today. First, by explaining to you. If you remember back the first of this year, I stood up on the stage and gave a vision sermon about some direction that we are going in the next, 3 years or so. And one of the goals that we have, a vision that we have, that we explained at that time, was to plant another campus, a sister campus to this one. One that would be that way, back further south toward Concord, maybe Harrisburg, Midland, Locust, somewhere, Skybrook area, I don't know, down in there. We're still praying and considering that. But that is a goal. That has not changed. There are many people that drive here to worship from those areas, 20, 25, 30, 35 minutes just to be here because they are part of who we are and our mission. There are many people who used to drive from those points but no longer do so just because the drive got way too long. And I just feel like if there's that many people coming from those areas, why do we not just take those people and use them to plant in those areas to reach more people with the mission of bringing life to dead places? Because there's dead places everywhere. So that vision, that goal has not changed. We are still moving forward to that. But that is not to the exclusion of this campus. We're not moving. We're not leaving here. The goal is to have a growing, thriving campus here and to have a growing, thriving campus somewhere over there. But we are not going to even give thought. We're giving it prayer, but we're not going to give much thought or conversation to there until we have made sure we are maximizing our potential here. And that is what 2020 is for us. I told you a few weeks ago when we were preaching about budget, 2020 is the year of the push for us. We are moving. We are busting through the door. We are busting through the ceiling tile. And we will either succeed or in our failure, we will watch God work through our limitations and still succeed. But one way or another, people get ready. 2020, we are moving. Not physically, but spiritually, posture-wise, we are breaking through. You need to be ready for that because we are posturing ourselves for what is next, both here and there. But until we maximize our potential here, we don't even have a conversation about there. So 2020, we have declared as the year of the W for us. W for the win. W meaning two U's, standing for upgrade and update. You're going to hear that. W for the win. W. We will be upgrading and updating our facilities, our ministries, our processes, posturing ourselves for the big move and what is to come both here and there. And that is all by design to prepare us for what is next. And when that happens, at whatever time and point God chooses to do it, that's when we will feel the release to have conversations about there. And maybe in the process, God may do something totally different than we even are aware of, and we are completely open to that. God may get so big with here that we can't even think about there, and we're cool with that. But either way, we are moving, and we are posturing ourselves for the next big thing. Upgrade and update for 2020. Now, let me tell you what that series way back then has to do with all of that. First, I want to take you to Nehemiah chapter 3, verse 6, and read this verse. One of the first things they started doing when they were rebuilding that wall, Nehemiah records, the old city gate was repaired, They laid the beams, set up its doors, and installed its bolts and bars. Notice the old city gate was repaired. There is a biblical precedent for upgrading and updating what is old. There is a precedent for repairing what is old. There is a precedent for moving forward. And we are taking what is old and we are upgrading and updating it and moving forward. That's what 2020 is for us. Now, since I have returned from sabbatical, in those few short 2 to 3 months, I'm telling you now, you're going to see these things happening in 2020, but some you may or may not have already seen. In just those 3 months, let me tell you how the old city gate has already begun to be repaired and things we have already done to posture ourselves to get ready. Let me tell you just a few things. You may have noticed or not that just last week we repainted the facade, the front of the building. We gave it a fresh coat of paint as it was fading. Appearance means everything for us to the thousands of people who drive by here and who live in this community every single day. If you haven't noticed, you can look in your chairs. We've upgraded our just simple things like our new giving envelope. We have a new welcome card. It's brand new design. We upgraded what was old. We gave it a completely new design. You may have noticed on the door, we posted our graphic and our logos on our entry doors with our worship service times. You may have noticed that we have changed, added, and updated our website and our social media. If you haven't been to our website lately, you will notice some of those things. You will notice new pages and new things, and that will continue to happen. You will notice new things on social media in different ways in the way in which we're posting. You will also notice that we have now added, and it's about to happen, especially for those of you watching Facebook Live, we have added a Facebook Live hosting team. So now, because we're upgrading our social media, and we hope that, right now we just post in the bare and the raw as it is, but we're hoping to make that streaming sound better, look better, and just better all around. And one of the first steps that we're taking is when you guys come here, you have greeters, you have hosts, but now you're going to notice greeters and hosts on the Facebook Live webcast. There'll be people there who will be greeting you and hosting and interacting with everybody who's watching live, Facebook, and through social media. We have created these shirts. I told you today, if you need help, see the people in yellow. All of our experienced team members wear this shirt. It says, I'm here to serve. I can help. If you're an experienced team member and you're not wearing this shirt, you need to be wearing one. We're not going to force you to wear one. Listen, people, we are not going to create a shirt design that covers every sagging arm and wide hip and everything else y'all complain about that don't make you look good. We're doing the best we can. We're not going to force you to wear it, but get on board with the team because the days that you're scheduled, this makes you stand out to the people, especially all the people who are going to be coming. It's all about seeing the people in yellow if you have a question or you have a need. We changed our budgeting process, and not a complete overhaul. We just refined it. We made it a little bit more detailed and arduous. We're asking ourselves tougher questions, taking our staff through that process, our finance team, our lead team through that process. And as a result, we passed our most aggressive and largest faith-filled budget to date this past year. We have updated the way that we bring guests and new people into the church and getting plugged in. There's a new process, and we've upgraded that and made it better. And by the way, we finished the third of the 3 hires for this year in just those few short months by hiring our crack guy, Chet Turk. And he's there, and he's already making contacts. You may or may have not noticed that we made our stage bigger and made our back wall bigger. And I want to give props to Andrew and his whole tech team, Fester, Michael, Anthony, all those guys who worked up here late. You'll notice that everything is wider, everything is bigger, and everything is preparing us for what is to come. That we've done that as well, and I want to give them props for that. Doesn't that look great? And there are many more things to come. But those are just a few things we've done in just 3 months. 2020, you need to be ready. It's going to happen. Let me tell you how else that series is working through us today. In Nehemiah 3:16 and 17 and verse 19, Nehemiah recorded in the rebuilding effort these words. Next to him was Nehemiah. He rebuilt the wall from a place across from the tombs of David's family as far as the water reservoir in the house of the warriors. Next to him, repairs were made by a group of Levites working. Verse 19, next to them, Ezer repaired another section of wall across from the ascent to the armory near the angle in the wall. There are 2 different repetitions that I want to point out to you. First, you will notice in the repetition of those verses, they are either repairing, building, or working. There's work to be done, and everybody is doing the work. Notice the repetition of the phrase, next to them, next to him, next to them. Next to him, so-and-so is working. Next to them, so-and-so is repairing. Next to him, next to them, next to. There will be work to be done. And it will take all of us working next to each other to get it done. That's how that back wall was prepared. That's how this stage was built out. People working next to each other, but working together. That's what it's going to take to posture ourselves for what is next. 2020. You, next to you, next to you, next to you, working. We preached a message just a couple weeks ago on serving. If you're not serving yet, what are you waiting on? It's time. We are moving. But Nehemiah also records in Nehemiah 6:9, right about midway through the effort, trouble. In Nehemiah 6:9, he says they were just, speaking of some people who were trying to intimidate and trying to oppose all the work, they were just trying to intimidate us, imagining that they could discourage us and stop the work. So I continued the work with even greater determination. Please understand, what we are doing, the enemy is not going to be happy with. There are a lot of dead places that he has people in that he's going to get really ticked off about us going in and getting them out of there. And when that happens, there will be opposition. There will be the moment where you get discouraged. There will be the moment where we go, is this really? I'm telling you right now, when that happens, make your fists, bear down, and go faster and go harder. We are not going to be deterred. Even if we are on our backs, we are moving. But he also records in Nehemiah 7:3, appoint the residents of Jerusalem to act as guards, everyone on a regular watch. Some will serve at sentry posts and some in front of their homes. Tell everybody to be on regular watch. To do this, it's going to take each and every one of you taking ownership and being on watch. This is your place. Take care of it. Be on watch for the people who come in and out of here. Be on watch for the things that happen here. I am grateful for guys like Don Starnes and John Trado who pick up trash every Sunday after all of us. But they're not the only ones who need to be picking up trash. If you're in the bathroom and there's paper towels flooding the trash, do something. Don't just walk by it. Pick up your trash in the parking lot. When you're driving in, if you see trash, don't walk over it. Pick it up. Take pride and ownership in your place. Stop leaving your junk around for somebody else to pick up. Quit being lazy. Everyone will have to stand guard. Those of you who were here from the beginning, you remember what it was like to be homeless. God gave us a great resource. We are called to take care of it. And it will take us all. It will take all the effort. So stand guard. If you notice things, say something. If you see trash, pick it up, but take ownership. Be part of the effort. In Nehemiah 11:16, he records also Shabbatai and Jozabad, who were in charge of the work outside the temple of God. Notice that, outside the temple. Outside matters. That's why we repainted the front. The way we look to the outside community matters. Let me be clear. If you want the pretty side of Kannapolis, go through town, get on Kannapolis Parkway, and start driving that way, west. That's where all the pretty parts are. We are in what is considered to be right now, probably going to be changing, but right now we're in the sunken part. We're in the not so pretty part, which is why we need to be a city on a hill. We need to be the prettiest thing on the block. We need to raise everybody else's property value around here and bring more valuable stuff here simply by the way we look. It matters. So we need to better the way we look from the outside. Yeah, we want to have aesthetics that are beautiful. We're not putting all our trust in that, but we're committed to it, and it doesn't matter what everybody else does. Look, in the last couple months, we've had one person, we got them on video. We had one person, this is random, it's crazy, but they drive up in their van, and they pick up one of the potted plants, put it in their van, and drive off. Actually, they got two of them, I think. Completely, what? And then another one of the homeless people comes, and they come to the door, and nobody's here, and they take the paper, and they get mad, and then they go out, and this goes, and destroy another one. We're going to put them back, and we're going to put more. And no one is going to stop us. Because we're going to make this area beautiful. So outside matters. But let me say, more than the building, outside matters too. If you're in here praising on Sunday, and on Friday night in the bar, drunk and cussing out your neighbor, that's an issue. The way you represent in Walmart, Pizza Hut, Food Line, it's not just the building. You represent, he's alive in the kingdom outside, everywhere you go. Remember that, because outside matters. Nehemiah wrote in Nehemiah 10:35. Now, all that stuff's easy. Here's the hard part. And if you remember 2 weeks ago, you'll know why. He says, we promise to bring, look out, the first part of every harvest to the Lord's temple year after year, whether it be crop from the soil or from our fruit trees. Basically, that's your money. This is the part where we remind or go back to 30% of the people carry 100% of the budget. What about the other 70%? So if you just do the math, 30% of the people are bringing in roughly 18 grand a week, which is helping us to be slightly under or just meet our budget. But if 30%, if a third are doing that, if the other 2/3 got on board plus the extra 10%, 18 grand would go to roughly 54,000 a week. Let me repeat that. That's 54,000 a week. If everybody would just bring first. Do you understand what we could do with that? I mean, sheesh. Lord help. And in Nehemiah 10:39, finally, they made a promise. We promised together not to neglect the temple of our God. I said this in a Facebook post this morning, and I'll say it again. When I was in 6th grade, I went through this thing called confirmation in the Methodist Church, and you stand up at the end of it and you make covenant with the body of Christ and before the congregation. And you make a promise not to neglect the temple. And basically, it's like the church as a whole. It's not just walls and brick. I remember that moment to this day, even still. That was a few months before I gave my life to Christ, officially like owned it by myself. Since that day, every Sunday, I have been physically able. I have shown up. I have served wherever I was, whatever I was doing, because I made a promise and I made a covenant. No excuses, well, I know I hadn't been there in a few weeks. No excuses, no lazying, no apathy. No excuses. Show up. Be committed. A promise matters. A covenant matters. No excuses. That's what it's going to take. Now, all that being said, let me finish by sharing with you these things. First of all, just that. I do not want it to blow past you prophetically what God is doing. That first series that we preached 4 years ago right here, we were moving into this building, has come full fruition back around to this moment. God has done that. You need to recognize God is at work. This is not the vision of one pastor, one team. It is God speaking right before our very eyes. And let me affirm that for you by sharing with you these things. And I want to thank our newly re-elected Councilman Ryan Davault, who's working so hard with many of our other city leaders. I asked him for this, and he sent me some of these things. Let me tell you what's about to happen in our area. And before I tell you and finish with this, let me preface it by telling you, be very clear that when we occupied this building, we knew about zero of this. We did not come here to plant in anticipation of what was to come. We came here because this was about the last option for us. We had already looked in about 39 other places, considered 39 other things, and said no to this place multiple times. But we were homeless, and we were wearing out the other church's building we were using. And yet, in all of that, fast forward to this. Just in downtown Kannapolis, there are 283 apartments under construction. That is happening now. That represents people just walking distance from here. A brand new stadium opens April the 16th, 2020. In the same downtown, there will be 125 to 140 townhomes that will be valued at $275,000 to $350,000 each. Some of you are saying, well, that ain't Kannapolis. Watch, it's going to be. And God put us here for it. Hotel and office structure buildings to be built beside the baseball stadium started in 2020. Let me say again, what is the year of the W for us? Upgrade, update, 2020. Some of you older folk need to hear this one. Major active senior living facility planned for downtown in late 2020, early 2021. Can you say 55 alive? Right now, there is the potential for the U.S. Olympic Training Facility being considered for the North Carolina Research Campus that would bring over 120,000 people per year to K-Town. Along with that, 6 governing bodies of sports complexes, all the training, over $150 to $200 million in development. They would build 2 to 4 hotels right in downtown for all the attendees and athletes. Which, by the way, when all them people are here, when they come on the weekend, when do we meet for service on the weekend? Hello. Over 4,000 home sites have been permitted to be built in Kannapolis over the next 10 years. The world is coming to our doorstep. Maybe you didn't hear this one, but just 3 miles from here, at a brand new exit off of exit 65, Old Beatty Ford Road, $350 to $500 million development. Burkdale style development, like over in Huntersville, but this one's been described as Burkdale on steroids. Burkdale style development, town center, medical office, huge housing component, hundreds of homes. When does that start? 2020. Year of the W. The city is doing a master plan now for Cannon Boulevard to help guide the growth for everything that's coming. Cannon Boulevard, which, by the way, is that road just spitting distance from where this sits. Kannapolis is about to change. The world is coming to our doorstep. Let me lastly tell you, at the beginning of the year, it's true. I stood up and said, man, right back in that corner, we could build, one of the things we said, we could build a kitchen. And for all you kitchen fans, here's what I want to say to you. What we've discovered in the process of that the kind of kitchen it would take to build an industrial commercial kitchen would be over $200,000 and probably not be the best uses of our resources. We researched this, especially when you're in a building. This is the other thing. We don't own the building. We don't own the parking lot. The owner of the building and the owner of the parking lot are two different people. The owner of the parking lot wants $1 million for the places where your cars are sitting today. So putting a $200,000 kitchen in a building we don't own on a parking lot that the owner wants $1 million for doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially when your kids and youth are out of space. And all this stuff is coming right here. So vision this, if you will. Imagine in that space where they've outgrown and now they're split. We move all our kids in youth ministries out of that space, except for infants and toddlers, which would still be close to mommy's. Check in. And we move all our youth and student ministries over to this area, and we use some of that warehouse space to build them new space and a big entry and a wow factor for all those new families that are coming. Imagine in that space an indoor or outdoor playground. One of the biggest things I miss, one of the best sounds on planet Earth is the sound of kids playing on a playground. We don't have that. We need to get that. Look at this picture. Now just hold that one, Sarah. I know I told you to switch, but just hold it. That was last week. That's the first time we've ever used the back of the building. And we were cooking on the new grill out there. You'll see this. Now you can, right there with our logo. But that's all our youth. It was an amazing thing to see everybody out back using that space for worship and just shared experience. Go back. Now imagine that. That's youth and students with kids on it. Youth, students, playgrounds, patio, a place for adults. It's all fenced in. Basketball court. All right there. Imagine. Now for you kitchen people who are ticked off at me right now, just one thing. When they move out, that frees up this space. So the kitchen that we're in, imagine this. We take a few walls down, expand the kitchen that we have, and it's not an industrial kitchen, but it's still a serviceable kitchen with more refrigerators and more ovens and bigger. That's everything that we'll ever need. And we can move some of those walls and open up our lobby area, which is like going to be tight. And so when you walk in the building, we could cut that corner off, open up all that space, and you'll actually be able to see where the restrooms are rather than ask where they are, because we have more space. Imagine. There'll be no fundraiser for that. Because if you just be faithful, we could pay all that off in 1 year without selling one dang hot dog. Listen, the world is coming to our doorstep. When we took occupancy of this building, we had zero idea. But God has put us here for this moment because He is making a way, and He is using He's Alive Church to do it. So get yourself ready for the year of the W, the year of the push, because our Waymaker is on the move.